to the Love Government. I'm Dennis Leary. We're doing a series of videos called The Sex Signs. And now we are on the 24th episode in this series. I'm talking about the handbook, the manual, the shorthand, rule of thumb, and the four fingers as a device, as a gimmick to remind ourselves of very, very serious matters. This is a hands-on operation. The hands are used for making love, but also the hands are used for work, like work in a garden or work wherever you work, writing with your hand. So this is really the application of it. And I talked about the thumb, the forefinger, and now we're on the middle finger, which is the sex finger of animality. And here, what we want to avoid is animal abuse. Because we are animals ourselves, and if we abuse any animals, eventually it's going to come back on us. We are abusing ourselves. And we are kind of like giving the finger to whatever animal we are using and abusing. Now, animal abuse is pretty obvious when you think of the slaughterhouses, the cages, the corrals, and the way animals are treated, fences. All of this stuff is a mistreatment of animals. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And it's terrible for us because it rebounds upon us. It's destructive for them, and also it's destructive for us. Now, I say some cases are pretty obvious to us, like the slaughterhouses. Terrible, terrible things. But others are not so obvious, and it's these not so obvious ones that really do their destructive work surreptitiously. And I'm saying that pethood, the whole institution of keeping pets, is silently destructive because it is destroying a whole animal nation. And in that action is also destroying us by creating a monster in between. Something that is no longer human and no longer animal. Like a free animal in the wild is inspiring, beautiful, magnificent. And a free human being also is that. Magnificent. Beautiful, special. But when you or I or any of us enslave another species and destroy it, you create a monster in the middle. Pets are monsters in the middle. They cannot sustain themselves independently anymore. They've lost their freedom. And we also are losing our freedom by reducing ourselves down to the animal, soul animal, or getting closer to being an animal ourselves, losing our rationality and our spirituality in the process. So you have a monster created in the middle that is neither free human or free animal. And it's also unsustainable. Now people will justify it and say, well, we want to create a new species that's neither here nor there. So it's debatable. And the problem with pethood is that it looks so attractive. How can you be against a pet? Oh, they're so cuddly, they're so warm, they are loving. This is love for me. This pet loves me unconditionally. I sleep with it. I eat with it. I do lover talk with it. I baby it. In some cases, even have sex with animals. But all of it, more or less, is subliminal sex. It's a substitute sexual object, making an object out of a free creature. And it's sick. It's sick to the bone, sick to the core. But it's not perceived as such. It's perceived as a love action. But if you look deeply into it with critical thinking, and you can only do critical thinking if you do actions that enable you to critically think, like the first two I mentioned, the thumb and the forefinger, diet. And so if you can't do that, if you don't do that, you won't structurally be able to do it constitutionally. Your constitution is not set up and affects your thinking. So you can't think clearly anymore because you've been sliding down into an animal state. Now they do a sort of thinking. You know, when I tune into the animals, kind of imagine psychically, it's just kind of a game, you know. It gets to be kind of sick, psychic sick, because it's not reading the animals, it's reading myself, projecting it out into the animals. But if I do that, the free animals say, well, of course, we want to be free. You human beings are the worst thing that has happened to the earth with your killing, and abusing animals. And then the pets are already mongrelized, so they can't think clearly, but if they could, they would say, yes, of course, we prefer to be free, but now we're trapped thanks to you humans. So it becomes a mess. That's what I'm saying. And then the Bible even says that the remnant of that love culture saying was, do not commit adultery. Do not adulterate your species by having under the covers sex with animals. It's a sick, destructive system. Very sick. And it's making our whole culture sick. So at this point, I could offer more rationale, more reasons, but somebody who is convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So none of this talk makes any difference because most of us already have our minds made up and no amount of talking is going to change that. But talking and actions like being free myself, being a man, speaking up for these things, being a free animal myself, speaking up for the free animals, and my taking these actions, I don't want a collar around my neck. I don't want to be in a cage. I don't want to be in a fence. I don't want to be in a corral. I don't want to be in a tank, an aquarium. If I'm a free animal, I'm not free. And so I want to stand up for freedom in that sense. Be a free animal, not adulterated. So in my doing that, doing those actions myself and talking about it, that goes into the vibrations of what's constituting this world. So that makes a difference because it goes underneath all the defense mechanisms, all the excuses, all the rationalizations. All right, now I want to go into the next really important area, and that's the ring finger here in the States. This is the ring finger. The marriage finger. Now we'll talk about marriage. Marriage is another huge problem that's leading us down the road to destruction, in my opinion. Now currently, in 2013 here, in the summer of 2013, people have been fighting to get married regardless of what sex they are marrying. And the court has just said that same-sex marriage is okay, at least here in California or something. And so there's a great jubilation that, hey, we can get married. Now we can join the regular married people. And to me, this is missing the whole point of the destructiveness of marriage. So, of course, the courts and the politicians and the people that are patriarchal leaning are going to say, oh boy, we got more people jumping into the marriage bandwagon. Good. That means more taxes, more money, more this, more that, more control, more restrictions, more paperwork under the aegis of marriage. So marriage turns out, in this sense, to be what I'm describing is a nuclear marriage. You got two people marrying each other like this. This is the nuclear part of it. Or this, or this, or this, or this. It's not communal. It's not communal, it's nuclear. Two people, and that leads to a nuclear family, a nuclear situation, and no wonder we got nuclear bombs. Now that may not be palatable or logical, but it's connected. So if we're in the love government, we marry the third element there. In other words, we relate to the wholeness, the holiness, which is the lover, is the universal, communal, open community of sex. So two people can get together. There's not. That's. I mean, you could. Two lovers can be twosome. Make a twosome. But why do you need a church-state sanction on that? Why does money have to get involved? Why does power have to get involved? Why do you have to need a stamp of approval? And we are being stamped in that process because we're no longer can do critical thinking. Our thinking is gone, or leaning towards being gone. If we're going to get married, marry the lover, and then everything else will fall into place. It's a community. It's leaning in the direction of the love culture, as I talked about, where the sex was open, communal, universal, well-governed, natural, organic. It was not nuclear couples coupling up like this. Because in the coupling process, what are you doing? You're avoiding the communality. You're avoiding the larger community. You know, if it's acknowledged or not, it's still an avoidance because it's locking down into one other person so that we can say, that's my husband, leave him alone. That's my wife, leave him alone. And connected with that wife or that husband is his or her property. There's property, there's money involved. There's all kinds of special interests. And it leads to this destructiveness. Marriage is destructive. At least from that point of view. Now you can make a case, you can argue against it, it's debatable. I'm presenting a particular point of view, which I think happens to be true. And I stand by it. I've been married. I've had a child. I've been church and state sanctioned. And I changed. I used to be a patriarch. I still am, have many patriarchal qualities. And now, because of my practices of the thumb, the forefinger, the middle finger, and the ring finger, and now we're getting to the little finger, because of those practices, I am able to see more clearly and act more truthfully, in my opinion. And I'm sharing that through the agency of the love culture and the love government. So thank you for being with us on this journey. We've completed the 24th episode now. And we leave you then with a sign of love, which is the L sign of the oval, the circle, and rather than the cross, circle. So we send out love, love, and always love. Thank you.